All right, folks, buckle up because we're about to dive into the batshit insane history of medical science. And when I say science, I mean some dude in a white coat saying, I wonder what happens if I stab a brain through the eyeball. Yeah, that kind of science. This isn't your average hospital drama. This is a horror comedy with a PhD and absolutely zero ethics. First up, lobotomies, the classy cousin of brain smoothies. Back in the day, if you had anxiety, depression, or just a case of being inconvenient, doctors thought the best fix was to jam a glorified ice pick into your eye socket and stir your brain like a martini. The pioneer of this madness, Dr. Walter Freeman, went on a lobotomy world tour like he was a rock star. Minus the music and plus the mass frontal lobe damage, he performed more than 3,500 of these, often in hotel rooms, because nothing says "trust me, I'm a doctor" like brain surgery next to the complimentary shampoo. Freeman was such a show-off, he once did 2 lobotomies at the same time, one in each hand, like dual-wielding surgical tools in a medical Mortal Kombat match. He even held live demos, casually disconnecting someone's personality in front of audiences like it was a cooking show. If this was medicine, then the Ice Age was modern refrigeration. People lined up like he was giving out free Wi-Fi instead of brain damage. Let's get grosser. In the 16th century, some genius thought it was a great idea to make a powder of sympathy that you'd sprinkle on a bloody weapon, not the wound, and apparently, the person who got stabbed would heal faster. Because medieval science was like, screw logic. Let's do wizardry. Now, let's talk about the Tuskegee syphilis study. Picture this. The government deciding to observe what happens when you don't treat syphilis. Because screw ethics. In the 1930s, 600 poor black men in Alabama were told they were getting free health care. In reality, researchers just sat back and watched while syphilis turned their bodies into human horror stories. And when penicillin became available, did they use it? Of course not. That would be ethical. For 40 years, 4 decades of malicious negligence, these men were treated like lab rats without ever being told they had syphilis. They were told they had bad blood, which apparently is 1930s medical speak for "we're lying to you for fun and profit." When this atrocity finally came out, it wasn't just a scandal, it was a masterclass in how not to do medicine. It's the kind of historical mess that makes you want to slap a textbook. Speaking of terrible doctors, meet Dr. J. Marion Sims, the so-called father of modern gynecology. You know what he used for practice? Enslaved black women. No anesthesia, no consent. Just full-on medieval torture with a scalpel. He believed black women didn't feel pain, because apparently racism makes you not just an asshole, but also delusional. Sims operated on one woman, Anarcha, more than 30 times. Imagine enduring surgery without pain relief so that some pompous guy can get a gold star from the medical community. And guess what? Hospitals used to have statues of this dude, like he was a hero. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. He was just the worst group project partner in history, experimenting on others and calling it helping. And then there's trepanation. Not a spell from Harry Potter, it's when you drill a hole in someone's skull to let the bad spirits out. Ancient civilizations did this, and somehow it stuck around like a bad rash. You've got headaches? Let's just poke a hole in your brain bucket. Head trauma? Hole. Demonic possession? Double hole. You'd think at some point someone would go, hey, maybe drilling into skulls is the medical version of using leeches to cure depression. Now for some real-life horror movie material, Nazi experiments. If hell had a lab, it would be called Auschwitz. Nazi doctors did things like freezing prisoners alive, injecting chemicals into eyes, and sewing twins together. And it wasn't about science. It was about cruelty, dressed up in a lab coat. Dr. Joseph Mengele, the angel of death, turned humans into playthings for his sick curiosity. These weren't studies, they were torture sessions with clipboards. Limbs were amputated and reattached just to see what happened. Gas chambers were used not just for execution, but for testing the speed and effectiveness of various poisons. They weren't collecting data, they were collecting screams. Let's bring in the CIA, because, clearly, war criminals needed a new hobby. Enter MK Ultra. The US government thought, hey, what if we dropped LSD into people's drinks and tried to control their minds? And that's exactly what they did. Dosed unknowing citizens, watched them trip balls, and hoped someone would confess to being a Soviet spy, or at least admit they liked pineapple on pizza. The results? Chaos. Some people suffered permanent psychological damage. Others developed full-blown psychosis. And the government just nodded like, yep, this is going great. They even set up fake brothels and dosed clients, hoping to uncover Cold War secrets between orgasms and acid hallucinations. You'd expect this from a Bond villain, not from Uncle Sam. In apartheid-era South Africa, the military conducted a charming little program where they chemically castrated and forcibly transitioned gay soldiers. Because apparently, the best way to build a strong army is to make sure it's full of traumatized, mutilated conscripts. Over 900 surgeries were done, not for health, not for choice, just for control. If horror movies had military budgets, this would be the plot. And it gets worse. Electroshock therapy, hormone injections, and a healthy dose of fixing people who didn't need to be fixed. It was conversion therapy turned into a horror movie with state funding. Now let's ruin childhoods with the monster study of 1939. Some researchers decided to mess with orphans by telling them they had speech problems, to see if they could induce stuttering. Guess what? They could. And they did. Congratulations. Your trauma is now data. These kids didn't sign up to be lab rats. They just wanted to survive the orphanage, not walk away sounding like Looney Tunes characters. Let's go international again. Guatemala, 1940s. The U.S. Public Health Service was back at it, infecting prisoners and mental patients with syphilis and gonorrhea without consent, just casually giving people STDs like they were passing out party favors at a nightmare birthday. Doctors infected over 1,300 people. They told some of them it was treatment. And in 2010, the U.S. apologized, which is adorable if you ignore the decades of suffering. It's like setting someone's house on fire and then saying, oopsie, my bad, 70 years later. New York joins the Hall of Shame with Willowbrook State School. Researchers intentionally infected mentally disabled children with hepatitis so they could study the progression. How did they get away with it? By telling parents their kids couldn't be admitted unless they consented. Translation: sign here or your child stays homeless. They literally fed the kids infected feces. Yes, you read that right. Poop, on purpose, with a straight face. And this went on for 15 years. That's longer than most people keep a gym membership. If this was a restaurant, it would be shut down, sued, and burned to the ground by Yelp reviewers. And let's not forget the Havasupai tribe. In the 90s, they gave blood samples for diabetes research, but researchers decided, why stop there? And use the samples for everything from schizophrenia studies to ancient migration patterns. Consent? Who needs it when you have curiosity and a God complex? Years later, the tribe found out and sued. The samples were returned, but the damage was done. Trust destroyed. Community betrayed. It's like giving someone your car for a quick trip to the store and finding out they entered it in a demolition derby. So, what's the takeaway? Medical history is full of brilliance marinated in madness. Sometimes science is less about discovery and more about seeing how far someone can go before common sense screams, "Stop!" Next time you see a white coat, just remember, behind every groundbreaking procedure, there might be a trail of broken ethics and shattered lives. Stay curious, but not that curious. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and maybe get a second opinion before letting anyone near your frontal lobe with a metal rod.